All right, Akim, Shalom, Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bashim Yahushai, Bashim Rakak Wadash, that honors the apostles and elders, great millstone, for teaching us his truth. Salutations to the sincere Akim and Aqua that may listen. May the blessing of election be upon your house. My name is Brother Raquai, and back in here with another quick and Lord's will, as always, edifying lesson. And for today's lesson, I don't really have an exact title of what I want to name it yet, but essentially, it's going to be something along the lines of Jake doesn't understand that they have enemies, right? So, there was this one chapter in the book of Judith that kept like sticking to me, right? And what I want to do is read a little bit of it and pick out a couple points. And as always, Lord's will, that this lesson may be edifying, right? So, let's jump right in without further ado. Okay, so this is Judith chapter 7, verse 1. So it says, the next day Holofernes gathered his whole army together, as well as allied forces. It was an immense army consisting of 170,000 infantry and 12,000 cavalry, not counting the support troops who took care of the equipment. He ordered them to march on Bethulia, seize the mountain pass to attack the Israelites. So they moved out, set up camp beside the spring in the valley near Bethulia. The camp was so wide that it spread toward the town of Dothan as far as Baalbaim, and so long it stretched from Bethulia to Simon, which faces Jezreel Valley. Right. So essentially, General Holofernes, his intention is to take down our people, is to take down Israelites. Right. So this is before Judith actually comes in, steps in. Right. But one of the things I really wanted to touch on is the mindset of these heathens and understanding what they're trying to do to take down our people, because our people are so engulfed essentially in this Babylonian wine that you're essentially that we're all the same, that we're equal, and so on and so forth. And that's completely nonsense. The Lord separated us and made us a peculiar people, made us above these other people. We're not equal to these heathens, right? So, but our people, as a matter of fact, let me start off with that. Okay, this is Hosea 4, verse 6, and it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee, and thou shalt be no priest to me. Seeing that thou hast forgotten the law of the Most High, I will also forget thy children. Right? So, because we reject knowledge and we have not taken on the covering of Yahweh Bashin Shai, what essentially happens is, we take all these different hits, and one of the biggest hits that we take is these heathens essentially devouring us, because as a people, we are not, we don't move with the wisdom, right? Of you don't move the covering of Yahweh Bashem Shah, because that is our power, that is our power source, right? So there's a couple of key things I just wanted to touch on that really stuck out to me in this particular chapter, right? So I want to jump around, but just bear with me on this. It says, verse 4, when the Israelites saw the size of the army, they were terrified and said one to another, those soldiers going up to eat everything in sight. There is not enough food in the mountains, valleys, and hills put together to feed an army like that. But in spite of fear, all the Israelites took up their weapons, lighted signifiers in the towers, and remained on guard duty all night. Next day, General Holofernes led out an entire cavalry so the Israelites in Bethulia could see them. He inspected the approaches to the town and the springs which supplied its water. This is very key, so just keep this in mind. He seized the springs and stationed the guards there. So essentially, this was a source of resources for our people, using that spring, because what happens, that spring is a symbol of a natural resources, and that's how we essentially, we replenish our bodies, and take care of our families and take care of our nation, right? But this is what the heathens actually did. They stationed people, they stationed cavalry, right, where the springs were, right, and captured it, right? So essentially, their intent was that, okay, um, because there are station control, officers at that spring, our people wouldn't essentially try and fight and get through the troops. What they would try to do is to get Jake to be starved out, right? So keep these things in mind as I'm reading. So it says, verse 7, he inspected the approaches to the town and the springs that supplied water. He seized the springs and stationed guards there before returning to the camp. Verse 8, all the leaders of the Edomite and Moabite forces, along the commanders of the troops of the Mediterranean coast, came to Holofernes and said, right? So this is the other nations coming in that you read about in Psalms 83, right? Essentially they're trying to take down Jake, trying to take down the Israelites, right? So it says, so this is the counsel they're giving him. So they said to General Holophernes, they said, listen, sir, if you listen to our advice, your troops will not suffer heavy losses. These Israelites do not rely on their weapons for their defense, but rather the height of the mountains where they live, since the mountains are not easy to climb. So then, General Holofernes, if you do not make a direct attack on them, your whole army will suffer no casualties. Stay in your camp and keep your soldiers in their quarters. Just command your men to blockade the springs at the foot of the mountains, because where there's no because that's where the people of Bethulia come to draw their water. Then, when they are dying of thirst, they will surrender their town to you. Meanwhile, our men will go up to the tops of the surrounding mountains, where we will set up camp and keep anyone from leaving the town. Everyone will starve to death, men, women, children. Even when, before we attack, the streets will be littered with their corpses, right? So this is their tactic and this is their plan to take down the Israelites in this present time, right? So one of the reasons I'm reading this is because they're taking that same mindset and they're applying it to this very day. And it's funny too that it mentions Esau and Moab, because they are one of the two key individuals, one of the two key heathens that you read about, that essentially they what's the word I'm looking for? They essentially they try to oppress Jake, right? Even to this day, even to this very day. Like, for example, in the Caribbean, for example, you have Moab, but not even in the Caribbean, but also in parts of, like, Africa as well, where a lot of you Jakes are situated. What these two key players do, they essentially they come into your country, they plunder it, they dangle a carrot in terms of loans and say, oh, you do not have the ability to extract all these resources, let us extract these resources for you, right? So they essentially, what they start to do is they try to offer a gift, right? They offer sweet words, so on and so forth, right? And their intention is to essentially make you a tributary, right? They're not trying to put you, essentially what they're trying to do is put you in subjection, but they're doing it more covertly, right? That's what the scriptures say, never trust thine enemy. So as a matter of fact, let me get that. Okay, this is Sirach 12, verse 10, and it says, never trust thine enemy, for as iron rusteth, so is his wickedness. And there's another one I wanted to get. Just bear with me. Gift. Okay. Okay, this is Exodus 23, verse 8. It says, thou shalt take no gift, for the gift blindeth the wise, and perverteth the words of the righteous, right? And this is one of the tactics that with some of these heathens, essentially that they do, right? Even to this day, they come in, they say they might offer a very interesting proposal, so to speak, that they say they're going to do, particular things in your nation, and you think it's going to be all economic prosperity, when a lot of those, and they what they're trying to do is to use your, like in the book here in the Judith the seventh chapter is referring to a spring, right? And what they even take it further in this modern time. In this modern time, what they do is they take control of your spring, whatever that spring is in your individual tribes where you're situated today. So, for example, in Nigeria, for example, you have the gas company, Shell, and Shell has been in that country for almost like over about 60 years, I believe, right? Extracting that oil because Nigeria has a plethora of reserves of oil. Same thing in Colombia, the same thing in Guyana with these companies called Exxon Mobil. And you different tribes where you're situated, you all have like your own quote unquote spring that these heathens they come in and they tell you some enticing words, for example, and they essentially they extracting the resources from your quote unquote spring, whatever that natural resources that you have in your country, and they it essentially that um that that wealth that is generated is leaving your country and leaving your Israelites poor. Because why? You lack understanding. You Israelites are not illuminated in righteousness. You're not illuminated with the power and the covering of Yahweh Bashem Shai. That is a fundamental component in order to fight and understand your enemies, excuse me, right? So, um, excuse me, and my voice is a little going. Um, the precept I wanted to grab, just bear with me on this. This is the book of Baruch, chapter 4, verse 1, and it says, "This is the book of the commandments of the Most High, and the law that endureth forever. All that keep it shall come to life." Excuse me. "But such as leave it shall die. Turn thee, O Jacob," so referring to Israelites, right? "Turn thee, O Jacob, and take hold of it, and walk in the presence of the light thereof, there that thou mayest be illuminated," right? And you know what this truth does is give you an understanding of not just knowing who you are, but giving you insight to also understanding your enemies and how your enemies think, how your enemies operate. Because Jake is such in a stupefied mindset where they constantly just think about financial freedom and essentially generational wealth, when their minds are all bugged out. Their minds haven't been cleansed. Their minds don't understand that, there's a lot more to actually having essentially a robust nation than just essentially focusing on having your own so-called black businesses, having your own businesses, right? It's a lot more to that than running a prosperous nation, right? Our minds are not having been fully cleansed, right? That's why in Jeremiah it says that, as a matter of fact, let me just get it. uh Jeremiah. Okay, this is Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13, and it says, "For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn them out cisterns, broken cisterns that can hold no water." Right? So they have forsaken the Lord, and essentially they go to these other broken cisterns, whether it's, to college or, this, not the synagogue, the mosque, church, all these different religions that don't offer you any understanding of offering any instructions of how to operate as an Israelite man or an Israelite woman, right? Right. So, going back to the point in this particular chapter is that, you know, these heathens understand that, okay, if they can control essentially the resources, they have a foot in the door of controlling you Israelites. And it's the same thing that is happening today. This is why I wanted to kind of bring what's essentially happening in the past to kind of shed some light of what these heathens are doing essentially in the future, right? And a good example of this, when you think about the spring and a metaphorical aspect, right? It really and truly, I'm using the spring as a metaphor as a natural resources, right? And Jake needs these things. You need your food, you need your water, you need, like essentially these are the principal things of a man's life, like it says, right? But I'm using this as a metaphor to describe what these heathens do and what these heathens do with these particular things. And a good modern day example of that is, you have this guy Bill Gates. He's buying up all this farmland, right? You have a guy that's doing this and telling you, okay, you have to eat, these particular things, right? And what does that do? These particular corrupt foods, so-called foods that he's offering you, are essentially they cause, you Israelites to transgress against the Heavenly Father. And this is one of the next topics that is understood in this particular book, right? Because these heathens understood that, okay, if we can get you Israelites to sin, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai will hide his face from us. And that's exactly what he did, right? um it caused us, and through different multiple, like transgressions, the Lord, it caused the Lord to hide his face from us and give us that bill of divorce, right? So Isaiah 59 verse 1, and it says, behold, the Lord Yahweh's hand is not shortened that it cannot save, neither his ear heavy that it cannot hear. Verse 2, but your iniquities have separated between you and your power, and your sins have hid his face from you that he will not hear. For your hands are defiled with blood, and your fingers with iniquity. Your lips have spoken lies, and your tongue have muttered perverseness. Right? So they understood this. These heathens understood this. Like, once you can get you Israelites to transgress, Yahweh Bashim Shai would essentially, hide his face from us. Right? um But Jake doesn't understand that, because Jake constantly thinks that these heathens, they're on the kind of like on the same page as you. They don't mean you no harm. There's a human race. Don't listen to Esau's dogma. Don't listen to Esau's covering. This guy doesn't. He's a base man. He doesn't know what he's talking about, right? So, um. Let me get Psalms. Just bear with me. Okay, this is Psalms 140, verse 1. It says, to the Psalm of David, deliver me, O Lord Yahweh, Bashim Shai, from the evil man. Preserve me from the violent man, which imagine mischiefs in their hearts continually, and they are gathered together for war. Right? And one of their mischief and one of their crafty devices is what they want to do is to essentially put that grain of rice in you Israelites' body, right? They want to put that so they can control you. That's one of the things that Esau wants to do, right? And they have sharpened their tongues like a serpent. Adder's poison is under their lips. Salah. Keep me, O Lord, Yahweh Bashim Shai, from the hands of the wicked. Preserve me from the violent man who have proposed to overthrow my goings. Right? So this is the crafty counsel that these heathens, especially Esau, does, right? Because they don't see you as essentially an equal. These heathens, like Esau, for example, wants to rule over you. They want to control you. They want to, keep you in subjection. They want to keep you dumb, right? But Jake is not hasn't been illuminated, so they don't understand these particular things. That's why they get and they take these punches, they take these jabs from these heathens because they don't know how to fight in the spirit. Let me just make that clear. Fight in the spirit, right? So, anyways, I guess I'll just leave it here. But I pray and hope this lesson was edifying, right? Just to kind of show some of the insight of how these heathens think, right? And how it kind of like translates to, essentially today of what they're doing, right? It's no coincidence that, for example, the Bill Gates, him buying up all this farmland, right? And telling you have to use eat these abominable foods that the Lord instructed us not to do, so on and so forth. There's no coincidence that they're doing these particular things. And I just saw this clip, on, I think it was on the Elder Yashawamba's page, how they were, I think they were in China, for example, they're making like fake meat and they're dressing it up all nice and making it look all essentially, delectable. This is the mindset of these heathens, right? Because they don't see you Jakes, they don't see you Israelites as essentially an equal. They think they're above you, right? That's their mindset. But anyways, I digress. But I pray and hope, like as always, this lesson was edifying and you got something out of it. Just like to give all praises, glory, and honor to Yahweh Bashem Yahweh Shai. Until next time, I say Shalom.